We can get started now. So, good morning to everyone. So, thank you, for coming and joining the meetup today. So, Coimbatore Front End, it's a group that was started a few months back. So, we didn't have any group that was specific to front end developers. So even when most of the meetups or discussions or communities you would have attended, it would have been more focused on back end related activities or process or something like that. So front end talks, it was very rare to come up, see something that was front end oriented. So in order to have a community for devoted and committed to the front end people. So we sort of Ramesh and Karthikeyan together founded this group, and so far things are turning out good. We have a lot of people joining in and participating. So without any further delays, we'll just go to the speakers. So I request you all to be on mute. If you have any queries, you can use the chat so that the speakers will get to you after the presentation is done. Now introducing the speakers. The first we will be going with Vilva. So Vilva, I will hand it over to you.
Dinesh, is it possible to record the session?
Yeah, the session is being recorded, and we will be sharing a recording of the session after the event.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So Vilva, over to
Okay.
you.
Yeah, thank you, Dinesh. And it's good to see people interested from cities like Coimbatore in India. So, yeah, let's quickly start. Present now. Chrome tab. Let me know if you can see my screen.
Not yet, Vilva.
I'm not sure. Okay, now it's getting pressed.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, yes, no.
Can you see my slides, like the slide screen?
Yes, yes, Vilva, we can.
Okay. So, good morning, everybody. It's a Saturday morning, and I'm going to talk about browser APIs today. Before we get into the topic, let me introduce myself. My name is Vilva. I work on JavaScript, React, GraphQL, the more of front end and bit of back end stuff. Kind of front end focused full stack engineer. My travels mostly like I travel and paint, but due to lockdown, like I'm within my home for past 2 3 months. Like, yeah, and I work for a company called Omeo. It's based out in Berlin, and also I'm working on a YouTube series. Like I have two videos already, and I'm developing more videos. It's called Known Unknowns, where I explain about things which we come across daily, but still we never got into it deep, like source maps, package log JSON. These are the two videos already there, and I'm making more such things. So this is a quick intro about me, and without any further delays, let's get on to the topic. So our first question is, we are going to talk about browser API. So let's talk about the right part of it. What is an API? API is the full form is application programming interface. Like APIs are places. Generally there is a concept like APIs refer to backend APIs where we make server calls and get the data from the servers and database and all the stuff. But no, API generally stands for any complex logic that is abstracted from the developer who is directly using it, and it makes a easy usage of it. So even React has many APIs. React doesn't have a backend at all, but we call even React features as APIs, right? So such things are called APIs. In simple words, complex things abstracted away from a developer and given an easy way to use it. And any such things becomes an API. What are browser APIs? Generally in browser, we have a lot of inbuilt APIs. That is like the complex parts which is abstracted from us, and we get few methods to use it directly. Few things which we think as functions are all actually not functions, but browser APIs itself. And these come as inbuilt. This comes within the browser itself. You don't have to go here and there for installing it like npm packages. Only one thing you have to keep in mind before using a browser API is you should check the browser compatibility, because not every browser is owned by a single company or single organization. So few browser APIs are supported in few browsers and not in few. So checking the compatibility before using them is very important. Okay. There are a hell lot of browser APIs, but we can broadly classify them into these types. APIs for manipulating documents, that is your DOM APIs and other stuffs. APIs for fetch data from the server, which is used for like, it's simply the fetch, which gets data from the server, makes the AJAX calls and all the stuff. And APIs for drawing, manipulating graphics. One example is Canvas. And audio and video APIs, the APIs which is used for us to create or play audio, play videos, and all the stuff. Device APIs or something which is my personal favorite. It tells you the things like there used to be API which is not used anymore, like battery API. It gives you details about the battery, and I guess somebody is unmuted. Oh yeah, thank you. And device client storage APIs, they are our local storage, session storage, and everything else. So these are the broad classifications of browser APIs. How does a browser API work? Almost all the browser APIs follow similar pattern. There are a few exceptions, but now most of the browser APIs follow this single pattern in terms of its working. It gets an object. Not it, objects are the inputs or the parameters passed to it. So you take a X browser API. That X browser API has an entry point. For example, if you take Canvas API, your get context becomes your entry point, and you pass the ID or the canvas from the DOM. That becomes your object. And after that happens, you get access to a series of events. Like after getting context, you can draw, you can do so many things. Similarly, for every single API, there are a lot of events it supports. So yeah, for mouse APIs, on mouse moving, these things are supported. Likewise, there are a lot of things which lot of events supported by every APIs. Like I can't remember everything, I'm sorry. So this is the basic framework on how browser APIs work. And forgive me right now, because normally I used to go with code and demos, but I didn't have enough time to prepare demos this time. I was quite kind of busy in my work as well. So I'm going to have a boring theory explanations of all the APIs, but I'll be pretty quick. I'll say I'll not take much time. First is the set of APIs like known unknowns. These are the APIs which we are already using regularly in a front-end application, but maybe we don't know that it's a browser API. I have just made the collection of those. Let me go in the order. Background task API. This is nothing but our request call idle something, like I don't remember the name exactly. It's request call when it's a callback. It gets executed whenever the browser or the particular tab gets idle. We mostly use this for prefetching or like for animations, for any performance things to be done. Like say you have a very big chunk of task to be compiled or executed, and you don't have to do it right away when the application boots up, because it's not necessary. You use this API. So when it tells you when the browser is idle, when the browser doesn't have any work to do, and you can start doing it right then. Canvas API is very straightforward. All of you might know HTML5 Canvas. on which you can draw, you can animate, and you can do all the stuff like MS Paint, I'll say, for the HTML. And Canvas API is where we get all the functions needed for using a canvas. Third thing is the console API. Like everybody might have known console log. That is not a function or something, but it's a inbuilt browser API. And it doesn't just have log alone, it has error, it has warn, it has group. There are so many different types. Using console log, you can even measure times between function execution, like time start, time end. It has so many other methods as well within console API. And DOM APIs, pretty much everything you do on DOM belongs to DOM APIs, like your append child, create text node, all this stuff. Any operation which you do on DOM is taken care of DOM API. And DOM API also, we also have CSS on, which is CSS object model, like document object model is DOM. Likewise, we have for CSS OM, CSS object model as well. And in DOM APIs only, like if you know CSS in JS library, they generate all the CSS from the JavaScript you write, and they just plug in into the application using the DOM APIs. And that's about DOM APIs. Fetch API is very straightforward. We use Ajax, HTML request, all those types. Sorry, we use HTML Ajax for making API calls, but like there's no clean way of using Ajax. At least I hate using Ajax in a raw format. Like before jQuery, we had to write all the opening the connections, getting the data, closing the connection. That was a pain in the ass, I'll say. So Fetch API solves that issue. Geolocation API is interesting. You can't access it in all the browsers. You can't use it in a non-secure site. That is, geolocation will be given to you in geolocation API only when your website has HTTPS, not if it's HTTP. That's and with the name you should understand, geolocation gives the location of your ISP, internet, and that's with geolocation. History API, everybody use browser back button, forward button, and everything is tagged. History API is like more of history. Our history is stored as a stack, I'll say. And in the stack, when you visit a URL, it just gets added on the top. When you press on the back button, it just gets popped out of the stack, and the previous URL comes to the screen. That's how History API works, and everybody is using History API without their knowledge. Storage API, it includes so many things, not just local storage, not just session storage. It has IndexedDB. It has some new stuff called web storage. So many stuff, like anything you want to store in terms of a browser, Storage API is the point to go. And web workers, web workers are being marketed as a multi-threaded JavaScript, but end of the day, they are not actually multi-threaded, but it's just a browser API which creates a new thread for you, like within the browser itself. These are the known, unknown, or like kind of boring, which many people might have already known kind of browser APIs. Next comes the interesting, or like my most exciting APIs. This is the list of APIs which gets me excited. And you should know, like, I'm getting excited because it's pretty new, and if it's pretty new, it's still in experimental. So here, most of the APIs are in experimental state. Full screen API. If you see here, like when I present it using slides.com, I can decide whether to present it in full screen or not. That is being determined by full screen API. Like say you are creating a game, you want the game to be full screen API helps you there. Bacon API is a very interesting stuff. In a real world application, in a production site, nowadays data is the most important thing. Like we don't even care if the user doesn't gets converted, but we want to know what he is doing. So we analyze him and we get a lot of data nowadays. Say there are some very critical data, like very important data, which has to be tracked and stored. But before even the response is made, the user just closes the tab. it just goes off, right? Or like he moves to another screen. He say, for instance, he presses the back button. What Bacon API does is we have something called a document unload. Um, I don't know if you people remember, but in Google or in many websites, when you are making some change, and if you press the back button immediately, or if you try to close the tab immediately, you will get a message like, are you sure you want to leave the tab? You will have options like stay or leave. That is because that is handled by document.unload. When we are going to unload the document, or when you are going to leave the tab, we can make a check and we can ask the user to decide. Likewise, in those times, we can ask the user to decide if it's a user defined or user initiated action. But tracking is not a user initiated action, and you can't hold user in the same screen and stop him from going away. There, Bacon API comes into picture. What it does, when the document is unloaded, it grabs the data and it can still make the API call. Like you can actually quit the tab, but still that particular tracking stuff which you were supposed to send it to the server will still be sent. Credential management API is the stuff which is used to handle your password. I like from the name you should be understanding it. So it reuses cookies. You don't have to log in everywhere. Like it's a pain nowadays. We have accounts. In initial days, there were only like Google and Gmail and Facebook accounts. It was easy to remember the password. Now I have like literally hundreds of accounts in hundreds of websites. Nobody remembers password. Having the same password again is not advisable, because this happened in a company I worked. Once some hacker got the database of user ID and password from another website, and he was actually using that data on our website to get the data. It was not hacking actually, but he had the user ID and password of the user and he just logged in. And there's no way we could track it till we traced some amount of traffic from a particular IP, and then we blocked it. Then we came to know that he is actually trying out every user only once and with the right password. So to avoid this, even if you're having same password for all the websites, just don't do it. What I do personally is for all my important websites which I believe in, I just have the same password, and to all the unimportant websites I have other passwords. So okay, off the topic, that's about it. And Gamepads API, I like playing PlayStations, and soon you can control, actually you can control a website using your joystick. That's going to happen soon. It's already there. The Gamepads API is already there, but it's still not stable. Like it's still very experimental and early stage. But once it gets stable, like imagine like I can take my Bluetooth controller, keep my laptop there, and I just can scroll from here and see everything. Like I won't even need a mouse anymore. That's with Gamespad API. MediaStream API is again an interesting thing. What MediaStream API does is currently there is no way you can actually stream, record, or take a photo from a website directly. There can be few websites which implemented it, but they might have used MediaStream API. But MediaStream API still is an experimental stage, not recommended for a production website. Once this is in place, we can actually do anything, almost anything with a camera that Android app can do or an iOS app can do. So it's giving us all the power to use our camera from a website. We don't have to rely on apps anymore once this is stable. And network information API, again, it gives you all the information about your network, whether you are using Wi-Fi, whether you are using cellular data, whether you are using a landline data. Like it gives you source details about that. It also tells you whether your mobile is on data saver mode. So using this information, you can decide to show a light version of your mobile website, or like if he is on a public Wi-Fi with a faster connection, you can show heavy images. You can determine the pixel size of the images as well dynamically based on all this information. So that's a pretty cool API. I guess it's supported by most of the browsers now. It's still in experimental phase, I believe, but it's already supported by many browsers, and I bet it's safe to use because this API doesn't affect your actual performance. You can always have a default value for your network type and the data saver on flag. But with this data, you can determine how much fast you can make your website load in a client's mobile browser mainly. So this will help users get a feeling that your website is being very fast actually. Next is the permissions API. Generally, like if you see, you open any video accessing website, you will get a pop-up in the left top corner, asking whether to allow your notifications, allow your video and audio. At times, we just click cancel, and for centuries, I didn't know that clicking on the address bar, I will get those options again. I can enable it again. For centuries, I thought, okay, if I don't allow it once, then I'm not going to get it back. It took me a lot of time to figure out how it worked actually. But using this permissions API, you can actually know whether a website is allowed for a particular thing or not. And if it's so mandatory, on every load or on every time you want the user to decide, you can show the same message again. The user don't have to go and search for settings every time he goes there. So this API can be not a big impact, small but a strong impact for a user, like mainly for people like me who doesn't know where are things arranged within a browser. And proximity events. This is another beautiful thing maybe many people wouldn't have imagined. Say you are using say your website is mainly focused on a mobile web, and say you are going to have a live connection or you are going to have a polling connection. That is a cost, right? Like, and when the user is using your website, he just gets a call and he just starts keeping his phone and he just starts speaking to somebody. Say if it's his girlfriend, he's going to speak for 2-3 hours, and the whole 2-3 hours you will always be making a polling call, or you'll be trying to keep the WebSocket open. Of course, if it's inactive, if there's no data, there are ways to limit it. But imagine you don't close the WebSocket, or you are going to poll the data for every 1 minute. It's going to be huge waste of APIs, right? There you can make use of proximity events. What proximity event tells is the distance between the user and the mobile. So if he's going to keep his phone in his ear, it means he's not going to take the phone and look at your website till he takes it off. So if the proximity is lesser than few values for some time, you can actually stop the polling. And once he takes the phone off, then you can again continue the polling. This will save some server calls depending on your, again, it depends on your application. It's not necessary for every application. And again, the next one we are going to talk about is the vibration API. Vibration API works on mobiles mostly, and it's for your gamings. Say you play a game, not just for game, you can be creative actually. You can use it for anything. Say you receive a notification, you receive a message, you can start vibrating the mobile already from your website. You don't need a mobile app anymore at all for all such things. WebGL API. This is something which I like and which I'm exploring a lot these days. And this is for 3D. Like in Canvas, you can draw only 2D stuff, right? In WebGL is of course built on Canvas, but it supports 2D and 3D both. And I'm just exploring these days like WebGL for the 3D models and rendering stuff. It's so cool, I'll say. I'm still not an expert in early stage, but I see a good future in WebGL. WebRTC is kind of real-time communication. RTC stands for real-time communication, and what this real-time communication means. We both are talking now. This is RTC. Like I'm talking and you people are listening. It's real-time communication. It goes for video calls. It goes for audio calls, and everything can be now done through through websites. From a website, you can actually now make a call. And beautiful thing is when you use WebRTC, you don't need an intermediate server. Of course, if you're a company like Google, who expects top performance, you may need an intermediate server. But for say you are going to create an open source app, you don't need any server in intermediate. Like you don't need any server. What I mean by that is You don't need a server to store the video or get it as packets and send it. No, you don't need for that. You can actually connect two clients using WebRTC, and it's like point-to-point connection. It's like real-time communication between them. And VTT. This is again so nice feature which I like. We can actually play videos in our websites, right? How do you think subtitles comes into picture? So subtitle is a specific type of file. You can call it as VTT file, and there you mention time frame, like from this second to this second, show this text. So it's kind of an order where you have the time frame and then the text. It goes on as through the complete length of your video, and for that particular time frame, it will show that text. And all you have to do is use WebVTT API along with Video API and pass the VTT file to WebVTT API. It takes care of everything. You pass the subtitle pass, everything happens as if you're using Netflix or you're using YouTube. That's with WebVTT API. And WebXR API, something which I'm planning to explore a lot, but I haven't explored still very much. But to give you an overview of what WebXR is, we had something like WebVR, but it is deprecated. And WebXR is a single point of truth. It's a single API which supports VR, AR, and combining VR and AR both. That is XR. XR is nothing but extended reality, which involves augmented reality and virtual reality. I don't have much details about it, but it's a good thing to check out. I'll say I am seeing it getting very stable faster, so that's a nice thing to check out next. This is with the existing exciting APIs for me. Next is the list of useful APIs. Page Visibility API. This is an API which will help you with performance and which will help you do some background task. Say there is a high complexity animation or animation which involves high calculations. You don't have to make that calculation and do that animation when the user is not seeing your page, right? Page Visibility API is a stable API and it tells you whether the user is in the particular page or not. Like if I switch the tab, Page Visibility will tell that I have switched the tab. Based on this, you can decide to improve your performance, stop unnecessary actions, and whatnot. Like creativity is the limit. This helps you define that. Payment API. I'm not sure how many people remember, but if you see in your mobile apps, when you make a payment in one app, Google Play will prompt to save it in their account. So when you make a payment in some other app or some other website, it automatically prompts to autofill the details. The same is coming to web as well. If you store your card details, everything with Payment API once, it stays in your browser. Whenever you are going to enter a payment page, it automatically takes it from Payment API and pre-fills it. Of course, CVV will not be pre-filled. You have to enter it, and of course, your PIN number will also not be saved. So it's safe. It's a safer bet when you are using a personal laptop, not on a browsing center, of course. And Performance API, it's a single source truth for everything related to performance. It tells you what is the first meaningful paint, what is the first contentful paint, what is the time to interactive. You can place observers between two things and get the data of how much time it takes. Everything comes under Performance API. Push API. What does Push API does? Say you are using a mobile website. In the mobile website, when you are actually using like closing the browser and doing something else, and you want to tell the user something happened. Say Facebook tells you when they are offline, they just ask you to notify when you are online. And okay, that's a notification API. That's different. But say you want to push something from the backend, like how mobile apps do. Mobile apps actually send you a push notification from the backend based on backend events. Similar thing is coming to web, and that's Push API. And Drag and Drop API, it's straightforward. Everything you do with drag and drop, that's Drag and Drop API. Resize API is when you resize your browser, this API gets called. At times you can use Resize API badly. One fine example is Twitter. In Twitter, for example, keep it in the size of the desktop, start typing a message, resize the browser. When it reaches the mobile viewport, it clears the message. Like if you have sent it, it gets stored, but if you don't send it and if it's just in the text box before sending, before pressing send, resize the browser and it just clears the box. This is because they use resize API and they just refresh the page to support mobile version. And I guess they've just forgot to restore the state. Like maybe that's a local state of the component. That's the reason. So if you're using the browser APIs, make sure you use it well. Service Worker, again, it's a useful API. You can create PWAs, and maybe everybody knows about Service Workers. You can interrupt API calls. You can do so many stuff with Service Workers. Again, it has a problem. Unregistering a service worker is a pain. Like if somebody registers a service worker for your website, it's going to be there. Like unregistering is again like you need to install a new service worker which removes it. It's a way round process. It's hard. So be careful before deciding to use service workers. URL API, it's not a so brilliant or so technically strong API, but what URL API does is it gets a URL and it does the dirty work for us. Like otherwise we should be parsing or like we should be splitting the URL based on the .com, .e and get the host name separately, get the query param separately. Everything comes in built with URL API. WebAudio API, to see it as a simple note, you can just play web audio in the web. Like you can play music, pass it, forward it. You can do all those stuff. But it's so deep. It has so many things like you can pass on stream. From the backend, you can actually pass the stream and play it in the front end. It has so many other stuff. It can actually convert your input from a keyboard, not the computer keyboard, but like piano, something of that sort. So WebAudio is a powerful API, I'll say. Notification API is nothing but the push notifications which we get from our browsers, be it mobile or be it desktop, and you get the allow notifications pop up as well. You need to allow for accessing it. And WebSockets API is for real-time communication. It sends data between two sockets and like on even basis or manually also it can be triggered. And apart from these APIs, there are few APIs which allow us to share data between web workers, data between iframe, data between two different tabs of the same website. So these type of storages are also being developed, but still they are in experimental state. I have tried to cover almost most of the important or most of my favorite APIs here, and lot of APIs. Why do we need to know browser APIs? Of course, you don't use all this daily, right? Maybe you use 3 or 4 out of this and you already know out of this. And why do you have to spend past 30 minutes listening to some idiot who is speaking about all these APIs? It's simple. Like knowing all these APIs improves your creativity. For instance, there's a Bluetooth API, which is still very new. Maybe you may have a very good use case. You may want to build it, but you may think it's not possible because you don't know that such APIs exist in the browser. So going through such APIs, knowing them actually boost your creativity. Like I have thought about various different stuff when I went through such APIs, and most probably you will never say no to any feature in future. Like I used to say no to many features when my product manager asked, and the reason I'll say is it's web, it's not mobile app, I can't do this. Maybe I won't be doing that anymore in the future. Like once few APIs are stable, of course, but it's good to know these APIs to be more creative in your work, and maybe you can build a new product as well using web. So that's the reason you need to know browser APIs. Okay, I'm done. Any suggestions? Feel free to get back to me, and please follow me on Twitter. This is my Twitter handle for any further question. And now we can have some Q&A time.
Thank you, Vilva.
Okay, yeah.
Sorry. So, guys, we have 10 minutes of Q&A. So, if you have any questions or clarifications, regarding browser APIs, what Vilva talked about now, you can actually come on audio and ask your questions.
Yeah, this is Sridhar. Hi, Wilva. I have a question.
Yes, Sridhar.
See, this browser API is actually it depends on every browser. Is it commonly workable for all the browsers actually?
So most browser APIs are compatible with all the browsers, but it's good to always check whether that particular API is supported by many browsers. For instance, our company, we don't support IE anymore, so we don't have to worry about IE, and we can use the APIs which is not supported in IE. But it's always good to check if a browser API is supported in every browser. And one more thing is, maybe they are supported in all the browsers few APIs, but not in the older versions. And going forward, since even Edge has accepted its defeat, I guess it will be available in all the browsers going forward with the latest versions.
Okay, so it is actually maintained and created by the each browser providers, right?
Yeah. So, to be frank, most of these new APIs are being started by Chrome, few by Firefox, and other browsers just implement it within their ecosystem. But they take some time, like maybe 3-4 versions later than Chrome release, they just bring all these things.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you're
So, Vilpa, I have a quick question too. So, I believe like these are first, even if Chrome published and everything, right? These all comes and I mean, these are aggregated through some standard, right? If I'm not wrong, it is W3 standards or something. The draft version will be submitted to W3C, and rest of the browsers, if they want, I mean, it is up to their speed, right? How soon they
yeah,
implement
yeah.
is
So
the
WP standards have to approve it for using it in the web, but like it's so transparent. WC is controlled by Google. So
yeah, I agree.
that's something like which is not a formal way, but actually formally it should come through W3 standards.
Okay, makes sense. Cool. Anybody else? Okay, so
Yeah,
if that,
cool. Then nice meeting you all of you guys. Like then I'll drop off from the call as well. If nobody's having questions, I'll go grab some sleep.
yeah, sure, Vilva, definitely. So everyone, like, feel free to follow Vilva on Twitter, and he's such a nice guy, and not just in this topic. You can reach out to him for any front-end related or even personal growth and all those stuffs. And thank you so much, Vilva, accommodating this talk in a very short notice, and this was very valuable to the community as well.
Oh,
Thank you so
it was
much once again.
like to see Tamil like community in Tamil Nadu. So it's nice. So yeah, thank you for inviting me.
Yeah,
See you
it's
guys.
our pleasure, Vilva. Yeah,
Bye
hope
bye.
hope to see you soon and stay safe. Bye.
You too. Bye bye.
Yep.
Okay. So that was, really great. A lot of us may have used most of the APIs or some of the APIs that Vilva mentioned, and some may have been new to us. So, hopefully going forward, we will also, explore more into browser APIs and get to know a lot about them and see how we can leverage them, in our future work. So, coming now, we have our second talk by Ramesh. So, without further delays, I will be handing it over to Ramesh now. Yes, Ramesh, please go ahead.
Yeah, I'm audible.
Yes, Ramesh, you're audible, but the voice is a bit low.
Um, okay, now it should be a little better.
Yeah, it's better now.
Oh, sure. Okay. My screen also visible?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Okay, great. Yeah. Good morning, everyone. So, thank you everyone for spending your Saturday time with us, uh, and also big thank you for Karthik and Dinesh for coordinating, and they put so much effort to make this event happen. So I'm really big thank you for. So let's start with that. Okay. So, let me go back to my presentation. So today we just talk about the upskilling for front-end developers. So mainly why it's required and what are the skills need, and I will share the some resources during the presentation. I have added already something, but so I will update the presentation with some more resources and circulate this presentation to the so you guys can show the presentation. So a little introduction about me. So I'm Ramesh Salam. I'm working in Robert Bosch from last 9 years. So I am senior front-end developer. I'm mainly working on the enterprise web portals like SAP and SharePoint applications and LifeRay, the CMS. Also, I'm working on this mobile application, hybrid mobile applications with Ionic framework. And apart from that, I also part of the recruitment team, so I will handle the technical topics to recruit the front-end developers in our team. So let's get into the topic. So yeah, so today, so why we are talking the upskills today, right? So mainly there are two aspect of challenges. So one is the technology-driven thing. So the AI, IoT, that rise of the voice in user interface like Alexa, Google Home, etc. Uh, so this thing mainly the main thing is AI. Okay, so let's to understand how this change affecting our careers. I just play a few. Okay, share it. One second. Present the entire window, so I can just present some other videos. Yeah. So few of you already might hear these things, but for the newcomers, so let's just watch this. I will just skip a little bit.
So Ramesh, we don't have audio.
Still not coming audio.
No, Ramesh.
Uh,
Share.
okay, maybe.
I think this whatever this presentation mode is, right? Is it intended to not to listen your audio because I mean
Okay.
not to listen to your speaker. Probably you can share the link. The team can look out later.
Yeah, great. Yeah. Anyway, I will be sharing the presentation, but yeah, maybe the audio not required. Just I think the visual also should be fine. So basically, this tool, whatever you sketches in the board or you sketch in your offline some notebooks and just take a photo that this tool will just give you the code for that HTML5 or SAML or UWP, the Windows code. And so this will just give you the plain HTML and the XAML kind of steps. There is another startup. So I think for this thing there is no audio, so only. Okay, so what this UI backend will do is, so simply you just design just using drag and drop, and you select the theme. There will be some inbuilt themes. Then it will just give you the production ready Angular front end code. So simply you just integrate with your backend APIs, then you are ready to go. And there are similar nowadays there are a lot of small startups coming this kind of tools. So for example, this EA is that. So currently they are in beta mode. So basically same thing like Microsoft what is doing. So you have to just sketch it and upload it. So it will just give you the working code thing. So few years back, these and all just kind of kids play kind of things. So but nowadays it's just giving us the really clean and production ready code. So so you can just directly go for a market without any fine tuning. So these kind of stuffs are really for front end developers that were the to upskill more. So this is the pressure, and also that nowadays the people who is really looking with websites and mobile apps are less, and they are looking just with voice user interface, voice assistant things like Alexa and things. So now some Gartner they presented that in going forward that people go for these kind of voice interfaces more than apps or websites. Okay, so this is the technology-driven challenges. So of course, the another aspect is that based on the current business environment and the industry thing, right? So, so in every company there is a quest for automation that like you automate it, into means speed it up like that. And nowadays the time to market is the key area. So the business pushing for that. Faster development time. And that currently almost every company is now they're working in the agile mode. So very few in the water model thing. So our working environment changes. So, and also for the front end developers, there is another kind of challenge, right? So for example, the backend developers, so they will focus on backend team. The UI designers, they will focus on design. But since we are a front-end developer sitting in between both of them, so also we need some kind of skills related to the UI design thing, and also some understanding about all the backend stuffs, how the API is working. And so apart from our skill set, so we have to also this overview about the other sides. So the design stuffs little bit, also the backend stuffs little bit. So this pushes us really to upskill ourselves more, kind of more than ever. So since I am taking part of this recruitment, so we are really struggling hard to find the client requirements. So the client asks that we need people with means all the variety of skill sets. They need HTML, CSS, JavaScript. They need the developers to know work on React, Angular also. Also, they need to work with APIs. So the companies that demand is somehow it's really going high, and the candidates we are going through is kind of they're settled with only with React or only with Angular, or they don't have the build tools like Jenkins, Maven. So we are really struggling hard. So the another thing is, okay, so this is the front end developer roadmap kind of thing. So just I work on this. I think it should be already open. So if you see this thing, so today this is the skill set required for front end developers. So the core is HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So that itself nowadays the JavaScript itself after ES 6, 7, 8. So every year they are coming with so many APIs and HTML also. There was a lot of APIs, and apart from this thing, the vendors, the browser companies also, just like Vilva said, regarding APIs. So each each browser vendors are coming with their own JavaScript APIs, HTML APIs, CSS3 APIs. So the core itself making us really overwhelmed, right? So on top of that, so you need by default you need to know that version control systems, that whether if you are bit by default in other companies, but if you are working in enterprise environment, so you might also require working with the Microsoft Team Foundation servers for version controls. So GitHub is required. Then after that, so this NPM and all is the default thing nowadays. And after that, CSS pre-process. So you need, so all the modern front-end projects require the release SAS and post CSS something pre-processor like that. And after that, the build tools, the NPM scripts, Webpack, Gulp, so this kind of bundlers. And the framework. So this is a big headache. So the React, Angular, Vue.js, the list is really very big, but yeah, they put the main 3 things. And okay, this and all. Currently, although currently just new things, I think going forwards, these things are really going to be the basic things, right? So the styled components and CSS models after this React JS thing. So all the styles are with JX also. All the CSS we have right within the JSX. Apart from that, CSS framework like the Bootstrap, I think the main one. So if you are working for Android or Android related things, then you need a Material UI and the unit testing. So nowadays there is no separate testing team, right? So the developers write unit tests. So for front-end developers, we need to know that all the enzyme, just Jasmine. So the list here also it's a really big list. And then the progressive web apps. So it's required us that working with the service workers, local storage, stuffs like that. And type checkers, the TypeScript. So if you are working on Angular, so it's really means it's not good to have, but it's really required TypeScript. So always without TypeScript, working on Angular will be really hard thing. So you need TypeScript. So this and all little bit from 2020 is the graphical. The REST APIs are although currently the REST APIs is still in the mainstream, but going forward the graphical, so these things will be coming up. And apart from so on top of that, there is a hybrid mobile application where you can just build mobile applications using your same skill set, the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So those scenarios you need to know the Ionic, React Native, Flutter, use Flutter, the Google hybrid mobile application framework, and the desktop. So with Electron.js, you can just convert your HTML code into a desktop application. So if you see this thing, so it's really hard to be a front-end developer. So nowadays. So this okay. So for the senior or kind of the people with 5 or 6 years experience, they can just go more beyond this thing, right? So they'll be getting specialized with the design systems, the atomic things, the micro front ends. There are so many other things for the senior front-end developers to go. So today we will just focus on the beginners. So I have just have some suggestion for the people who just recently started as a front-end developer. So means the minimum skills to have means to survive in the current industry. So let me go back to my presentation. So out of that, for the people just started with front-end development, maybe 1 or 2 years like that. So below skills are kind of really record kind of skill sets. So yeah, the core thing. So the core, it's being strong in this JavaScript and the latest HTML APIs. Just Vilva spoke, right? So these things that really matter. So even though the React, Angular, Ionic are important, but they are all based on JavaScript, and so being really strong in this core technologies, it's very important. Let's say that if maybe the 5 years back, when there is a jQuery is the predominantly the main JavaScript framework, so that time it's really not required to know JavaScript, right? So if you know jQuery very well, it's very easy to learn than the JavaScript. The learning curve will be very less. So at that time it's very easy to see that people who work on jQuery at expert level thing, but they don't know much about the vanilla JavaScript. But nowadays that JavaScript is getting more better, and so many companies really building huge JavaScript ecosystems like Ionic, so many Angular, React, something like that. So being core expert in the core technology is really important. So then after that, the IDEs. So nowadays, I think there are so many IDEs like my Adobe, Dreamweaver, Brackets, and WebStorm. So there are so many things, but currently the VS Code is dominating the market. So the VS Codes come. Let me see my other VS Codes. Okay, so currently the VS Codes means it by default integrated with Git, and it's kind of really a big ecosystem that there's so many plugins. So it's better to just master, spend some time to learn all the VS Code features that are available. I think yeah, we can go ahead and speak about these plugins, these features are available with VS Code that takes away one whole day. It's really big. So just spent some time for this VS Code. Apart from this plugins things, and also the syntax highlighters and the color highlighters. So if you think, right, so these are very very small utilities, but in the when during your development things, so it will be really handy kind of thing. Apart from that, the ML, the same coding kind of thing. So if you just put on things, people might be already aware of this kind of ML kind of thing. So if you so there are really small utilities, but it really contribute much to speed our development. So this is the IDE part. So one apart from IDE, then the frameworks. So although there are so many frameworks, the majority of these things in current time is this React, Angular, and Vue.js. So if you are working in this product or startups kind of thing, so React is the king, and the enterprise scenario, the Angular is really popular, and the Vue.js that also has a great market share due to its easy to learn and very efficient kind of thing. So learning at least these three frameworks is important. So far that the people will be the Angular UI developers, the React UI developers, but currently that it's not enough kind of thing. The situation is that the companies is expecting people to work on whatever the frameworks. So this I'm mainly speaking in the kind of service companies, right? So Infosys, TCS. So here it's really knowing multiple frameworks is really important. Maybe the product companies, it might be less important to learn, means go very deep inside any framework that being used in your companies. If React means then, so go deep with React if you are working in a product companies or startups. But in survive in the enterprise MNCs kind of environment, so it's really required to work on multiple frameworks. So this Ionic Flutter, so yeah, it's kind of based on the situation which enterprise you are working. So for us, actually it's easy to learn this Ionic Electron JS because it's since it's all Angular, sorry, the HTML based thing. So knowing this framework are really basic. So apart from frameworks, there is a toolkits, right? So we already talked about Git, DFS, and you need to know about the front-end building tools, Gulp, Webpack, Babel, etc. Also CSS preprocessor. So writing plains is really hard nowadays. It is really hard to maintain. So at least in CSS there are a lot of things, but at least knowing that SES is the really majority uses the SCSS format. So at least knowing that it's really important. These containers, although it's not exactly that means 100% the front-end developers responsibility, but still important to know this container stuff. So you have the understanding about the context, which context your application will be running. So at least high-level overview is required for this containers. Apart from that, when we say this Git thing, there is a CI/CD, continuous integration and continuous deployment. So although there will be teams for doing that, but having the overview about those things really required. and the concept. So the recently the hot topic is the micro frontends. It's nothing but just a microservices for the backend kind of thing. So basically, you just break into small piece of a front end your UI and just make the styling and the data to the particular component, make it stand alone. So this is a really hot topic nowadays, and this responsiveness is a very basic thing. So we have to always start with the mobile first approach, and this and all very basic thing, and progressive web apps. So this progressive web apps, this service workers, local storage, all those topic is if you are working on the web application kind of things, so really important. Whatever the website go nowadays, you can simply that add to your home screen. So there comes with the progressive web apps, that offline capability and everything. And the JavaScript design patterns, data structures. So this also for front-end developers really important. The testing, unit testing. If you are working for Angular kind of things, the Mocha, Jasmine, or if there are separate unit testing frameworks that work really good with the particular framework. Like React means some particular testing frameworks, and Angular means some particular testing frameworks. So CI/CD already we spoken, and also writing the clean code. So this really important nowadays. So all the companies focusing on the application performance and clean code, the code maintainability. So in those aspects, this writing clean code and giving writing the comments with some meaningful comments and following the some kind of style guide, right? So the if you go to net, there will be a style guide for CSS and JavaScript. HTML will be available. Let's say that there will be a Airbnb style guide for JavaScript HTML. So those things really famous nowadays. The Airbnb CSS style guide, HTML style guide. And apart from that, there is a specialization based on your the type of enterprise you are working. So for us, the team currently I am working on, we are working mainly on the SAP platform. For if you're working on SAP, then there is a SAP Fiori. So it has kind of UX guidelines, UI component library, the UI style guide. So everything defined specifically to SAP platform. So having really that understanding this SAP specific UI guidelines, the process of developing UI, it's really important. So this is related to SAP, but there are so many platforms like Salesforce or SharePoint, whatever the platform you are working. So there will be a set of technology you need to specialize this thing. So only then we can survive in the enterprise means MNCs. If you have any specialization with specific to SharePoint or SAP or any other tool, the e-commerce, Salesforce, so it's endless. The list is endless. So if you're working on the mainly Android platform, that the material design is correct. And the soft skills, it's really important as the technical skills nowadays to survive. So working as a team, and nowadays the teams are really distributed. One developer will be sitting in Germany, one developer will be sitting in Bangalore, another developer sitting in California. So, and they might come with different ethnic cultural backgrounds, and how we are really without any conflicts, how we are effectively collaborating with them is really important. also working with really different stakeholders. So if you are working, there will be a customers. If you are working a front end team, there will be obviously the back end team, testing team, UA team, UX research team. So there will be a different stakeholders you'll be working. How you're communicating well with them, understanding their point of view. It's really important. So the next topic is remote working, right? So now it's after this COVID-19. So working from home is new normal. So how we are making ourselves motivated and being productive in working from home is really important. And also empathy. So um, so having empathy about the different stakeholders, right? So because you might have some constraints, but from the point of the UX design team or the business team, that feature is it will be really important to them. But for you, it might be technically there'll be a lot of constraints to implement those things. So those kind of conflicting times. So really having empathy about the another stakeholders really important to have a good team rapport. So we have to focus on the soft skills also as in equal as the technical skills. So yeah, whatever I spoke this really for the entry level front end developers. But if you are already kind of in higher roles like senior front end developers or front end architect, so miles to go basically. So there are so many things to upskill. These kind of after current scenario, upskilling yourself is really important. And when it comes to Coimbatore front end group, so we are really committed to just support this learning and upskilling and sharing with community these topics. So and also it's currently it's really important to just upskill ourselves and learning from each other, right? So we have to continue and from as the organizer, so we are really committed to take it forward, guys. So I added few resources, but I will update this list with a few more things, and I will just upload this presentation in the Meetup, guys. So you can just take a look at it once you publish. Maybe end of the day, I will just publish it. Yeah, I think we done half of the time. I went really speed. Maybe we can just start with any questions, or you can share something from your point of view. Somebody, basically all mics are muted, so if you are speaking with muted, please check the pulse.
Hi Ramesh, this is Vijay here.
Yeah.
So I don't really have a question, but I have one point to put up so that like we'll be aware of that. So the roadmap which you showed is really good, but it there's one point like which is missing, like that is security. So like if you go to like CA or any kind of certification, you'll get you'll get to know the importance of security. So as a developer, being a front end or a back end, it's important to know about at least top 10 OWASP security vulnerabilities, so that when we are developing, we don't incur those security flaws. So like it's good to always look at OWASP top 10, and whatever we are developing, we have to make sure like it's secure as well.
Yeah, I completely agree. So I just missed that just for beginner thing, but yeah. So uh, the security, the testing, so it's all by default skill sets to have nowadays. Yeah. So thanks for pointing out.
Thanks,
Um,
Ramesh.
sorry. Okay, so I thought, okay, this thing I missed. Okay, we thought that just going through the recently published uh, the front end jobs. So what are the skill set they are requiring, right? So you just see that even with the 2+ years experience, so uh, the core is there, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So apart from that, there is, so this is from Direct Type, I think Indian company. They need to, although we are front-end developers, they are expecting us to some extent working with any server-side technologies and good knowledge of one or more client-side framework, MEC frameworks, React, Angular, Backbone, thing, and design patterns. Also, experience with the unit test, integration test, continuous integration system. So it's really high. And also the other part is the bonus points. So progressive web apps, Node.js, and how to reduce performance topic. You reduce your loading time. These are from, yeah, so this is from DirectEye. If we go to,
So Ramesh, sorry to interrupt.
yeah,
So you're not presenting anymore. So if you're showing the screen, please feel free to share once again.
it's not presenting. Okay, it's presenting now. Oh, sorry guys. So
No.
yeah,
You.
let me present it again. I think.
Yep.
Okay, it's starting. Let me know, guys, once you're ready to
We
see the
can.
screen. Yeah. Okay, I was talking about this particular job. Uh, maybe we'll just go to other things. So from big, so this is from Cisco. So if you have a look at it, so the basic HTML, CSS, and uh, JavaScript, TypeScript, Angular, responsive web design, experience in developing large-scale application in Java. So I don't know how the Java developers will go and work on front-end developers and writing
Basically,
unit
they
tests.
want everything in a single
Yeah,
jar.
yeah. So yeah, so that's thing. So even though we understand this, but from request from our client is really like this. So the last 1 year, whatever the requirement we receive from our customers, so it's all look like this. So then you need to know that option, all the design patterns and the Git, CI/CD, Jenkins, and in Agile. So this is how the currently the companies is looking. What these are things looking from the front end developers, and it's really difficult to learn all these things. But we don't have any other choice to other than really transforming ourselves to survive. some other PA developer from Accenture. Only female candidates. Okay, something. So I think these companies focus on React and React Native. Okay, so this is from posted 3 days ago from Bangalore. Let's see this HTML CSS, all MVC frameworks like React, Ember, Vue, Angular, Git, CI/CD workflows, Google Analytics, and WordPress, and A/B testing tools. So apart from that, some soft skills. So yeah, okay, so this is the kind of reality that we are facing right now. For example, in our for me, that okay, so nowadays we have started working, but since last year, so in our company, it's enough. It's enough that you are know any one framework, Angular or React working. Then that's completely fine. So the React developers will be working on the React projects, and the Angular guys will be working on Angular. So, but from the last 1 year, so they're really pushing us to work it on the multiple frameworks. So it should be happening in all other companies also. So the only option is we have to upgrade ourselves. I think I covered all the thing I planned to speak. I will share all these resources. I think you guys can just go ahead with this front-end developer roadmap to understand what are the essentials they like when you are just starting with the front-end career. Because with this, I will just stop sharing. Any other questions, guys, or any other general suggestion?
Hi, Ramesh, I have a clarification as well as a little confusion.
Yeah.
See, actually, when you shown some developer profile saying that they need React and Angular and all other thing. Is it actually the companies generally use all these kind of frameworks or one thing is
service companies like so Bosch or Infosys, pieces, whatever the service companies, right? So there will be there is those kind of companies. It's really required to know multiple frameworks to survive, because their expectation will be that whatever the projects comes up, so you should be ready to take that, whether it's React or Angular, those kind of stuff. But if you are working a product company that your architecture is based on React, then those kind of scenarios, it's really not required to know all the frameworks. Means that is the majority of frameworks, but going really deep into the particular framework that used in your product, maybe React or React Native or Vue.js. So that will be the record thing.
Yeah, correct. Good. And one more thing, actually, in your company, just a clarification is nowadays actually the companies will expect and the newer technologies like React or Angular or whatever the frameworks, they're expecting a kind of a speeder delivery.
Yeah. So
but Is there any thing or any process or anything is used in your companies or any other companies to cope up this kind of speeded delivery, or anything tools or techniques
Yeah,
or
yeah.
things to
So
use?
yeah, it's they're really pushing. There'll be the automation teams that ask you to automate a lot of things, right? Uh, that it's not from the single tool, something like that, but it's kind of the wherever possible, right? Writing test cases, and there are tools to automate the responsive testing, uh, and using there are a lot of plugins coming up with VS Code, right? To syntax highlighter, to auto reload. There are small things you can do it from the multiple aspect.
Okay.
Uh, Although there is no single tool to just automate or speed up things.
Yeah, yes, Ramesh.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, to add in more point to Ramesh information. So there are a lot, not just a single tool. There are a combination of process tools and even developer initiatives put together makes the team faster delivery. One such example, building the UI repositories in general these days became very common. Building a UI repositories as a global one, so that each and every other developer can just use it. Instead of instead of ensuring every developer uses the same color and signature for the button, you just develop all those components as a UI repositories and make it as a common library across your projects. Everyone just consume it and will start building the pages. It will, by doing so, it will make the delivery of the project or any new page will become very faster. Such an one example, as also Ramesh said, it's a combination of everything.
Yes. So it start with from the kind of having the documents and putting together, right? So, and also using the kind of the older development process that the developer will be working on the different code base, the backend team will be working on different code base. So nowadays it's not at all happening. So the entire team will be working on the same Git. Uh, Thing. So yeah, I can say that there are so many things we can, small things we can do it from the multiple aspect.
Okay, so due to time constraints, I'm going to actually sort of take all your Q&As or any other clarifications you have. You can reach out to the presenters via their social media handles, or you can also message them on Meetup if you're already a member of the Coimbatore Frontend group on Meetup. If not, please do join the Meetup. So thank you so much, Ramesh, for taking your time to prepare such a good presentation for us, and provide us with all this valuable information. So Vilva is not here, but thanks to Vilva as well. So it was really great, during these times, taking time off your everyday schedule to prepare this for us. I also thank everyone who's taken the time to attend the meetup. Thank you so much for being here. We hope that you have learnt a lot from this, and we hope it'll you'll make use of it in your day-to-day activities. So if you have any other feedbacks, suggestions, or if you have any clarifications or doubts, you can as I said, you can carry on further with the presenters social media handles, or via the meetup group itself. So please feel free to do it. So if anybody is interested in giving a talk or sharing your knowledge or your experience so far, you can definitely reach out to one of the organizers. It can be Ramesh, Karthikeyan, or me, or you can just make a post on the meetup channel itself of what you're willing to talk. So it will definitely we'll schedule it for the upcoming meetups. So thank you so much. I was just wondering, if we could take a group photograph before we sign off. And before we go to the group photograph, I would like to thank our organization TrustRace. So
We really
this
big
is
thank you for
yeah.
they
So
are
TrustRace has been
sponsoring
us from the beginning of the meetup group creation. So they have been sponsoring us with space, with all other things we needed in order to make the meetup successful. So thank you so much. So TrustRace is a traceability as a service platform. So wherein brands can achieve their sustainability goals by tracing products through the platform. So if you have time, definitely visit the website trustrace.com to learn more about what TrustRace is, and you will definitely be coming across a lot of sustainability labels in the future on every product you're going to buy, and there will definitely be a traceability provider like TrustRace behind it. And yeah, thank you.